Okay, so we are recording. Hello again, everyone. Just a reminder that today's class is sponsored by Wellson's Health Plan, and we are making some tacos. Specifically for me, I'm making some fish tacos, and we're gonna whip up a quick salsa to go with it as well. Let's just dive right into it. Oops. I'm going to get rid of me. I'm gonna remove this spotlight so we just see my hands. All right, so to get the recipe started, we have some cutting and prepping of our ingredients. So for my protein choice, I'm going to opt for a white fish. Some tips when choosing a fish to cook with if you're going to do some fish tacos. White fish is really nice because it really complements the light flavors and like the salsa and the freshness of the traditional pairings for a taco, right? The whitefish pairs really well. It's gonna really allow whatever is shining, like the acid and the lime and the flavors and the jalapeno, to really be a great vehicle for these things. We are going to season our fish with some chili powder and cumin. Fear not, you don't have that. You can always get a good old taco seasoning mix. This is a really great fallback. If you do not have fish, don't fret. Any ground meat, any canned beans also work. So whatever protein you have on hand, ground chicken, even if you have shredded chicken, you can use whatever you have on hand. I am using some corn tortillas. These are some smaller tortillas. I had those left over from another recipe. I didn't realize I'd have so many left over. I originally was going to use these larger flour tortillas and make almost like the size of my face size taco, or you could do some good old fashioned hard shell. So again, that's the beauty of a recipe like this, is you can kind of pick and choose what you have on hand or whatever you like. I did toast my corn tortillas before class. I have a gas stove and I just had the burner on a really like the lowest heat, and I just kind of sat them over top, being very mindful. You can see they got a little warm. If you have a skillet, you can warm them up in a skillet, or you can also warm them up in the microwave just to get them a little cooked. Again, reminding folks out there that are new, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat, and I will do my best to monitor the chat so that way I can answer as I'm cooking. But we are going to start. I know the ingredients want us to go and do the protein first, but because I am going to be working with some gloves with some of these ingredients, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to make my salsa first. I want to get this jalapeno out of the way so that way I have a clean workspace where I am not going to get that jalapeno juice or seeds anywhere where I might touch myself or touch my eyes. I don't want to touch my skin, touch my face. Just want to be careful and mindful of that. I did start out by mincing my onion. For those of you who cut onions, onions release this sulfuric compound that can interact with our eyes to produce tears. Oh, I have a question in the chat already. Do you find the corn tortillas dry if you only char grill them without fat? That's a really great question, and thank you for asking that. I personally do not, but I will say this. I was a flour tortilla person very, very through and through until recently. So I am sure if you have a little bit of spray oil or just a little bit of fat in a pan, it would really help activate the flavors in something like this. I can tell because I used a quick dry heat method that you can tell it's not fully cooked through. Toasting it a little more would definitely serve it well. But I was trying to be speedy in my prep. But definitely experiment with both of those ways if you have the option to see what you prefer. I might even just toast those at the end because sometimes I like to just get that charred flavor. A great question. I do think that a little bit of fat goes a long way activating these flavors, especially because they're almost raw. When you eat them, they do need some heat to kind of really activate that flavor and that texture. But we're going to go ahead and start by our onion is minced. So we're going to cilantro and our jalapeno. So we'll go ahead and start with the cilantro. I kind of take it at an angle and shave it off the stems. This was just a small bunch of cilantro. I am not a huge cilantro fan, so if you do not like it, you may skip this part. Some people actually have a genetic marker that makes things like cilantro taste like soap. So if you're someone who thinks this tastes like soap, you are not alone. It's actually a particular gene that you possess that makes this flavor taste soapy. I can't really tell if I possess that. I think it's a hit or miss. I think it depends if it's in another dish. I don't notice it. If people top things with cilantro, then I definitely notice it. But that's a pretty cool tidbit about cilantro. I'm sure you know if you like it. It's really nice and refreshing. If you don't, you don't. I'm gonna give it a bit of a rough chop. Get it out of there. Lovely. Toss it in with my onion. I'm gonna work on my jalapeno. If you do not like spice, you can also skip this. I don't hate spice, but I don't love spice. So I'm gonna opt for just a little bit of spice because I'm gonna share these tacos with my husband and he loves spice. So I'm gonna shoot for more of a mild versus hot flavor. Again, when working with a jalapeno, I try to buy gloves when they're available because I have, made the mistake of not being very careful and getting the juice and the oils on things, even like a seed residue. So just being very careful when you work with hot peppers. Being careful none of the juice flies up into your eyes. And you give it a good mince. If you're in a family and you want to be able to prepare this meal and you have some people who like spice and some people who don't, what you could do is you could add this on the side as a topping for your, just a jalapeno topping for your salsa. I'm gonna go ahead and take my gloves off. Pull them inside out. Gonna get this cutting board out of the way. And pull the rest of these guys over here. I have a puppy at home and I try to be careful that seeds and all of that does not fall on the floor. I could see her. Oh, I see a seed now. I could see her thinking that's something for her, and that wouldn't be fun. Let's check the chat here. Nothing in the chat. Awesome. We're going to go ahead and dice up the tomato. My knife needs sharpened. I'm going to cut around this core. If you don't mind that, you can go ahead and leave that in. I always find that there's not a really wrong way to cut a tomato. Especially people don't really like this inside. I don't really mind it. These were just some tomatoes on the vine. I do think Roma tomatoes are really great in a recipe like this. If you have cherry tomatoes, like I have sitting over there too, that need used up, go for it. I think salsa is a really nice vehicle for using tomatoes that are on the brink of being too squishy to enjoy on their own, because you are going to dice them up rather finely. And you are going to add them to some other ingredients. And they're going to be a topper, right? As long as they're not, so mushy that they're disintegrating, it should be fine. I also think this type of salsa would be really beautiful with something like a little bit of mango added to it. I'm gonna rinse off my workstation here so we can cut some other things. So I do have an avocado here. I actually had someone deliver my groceries today for class and it had a ripe sticker on it, and this is pretty squishy. So we'll cut it together and see what it looks like. I'm curious if it's almost too ripe or it could be perfect. Let's do the reveal. Oh, that is quite beautiful. It's getting a little turned, but it's not too bad. I'm actually just gonna slice this in the shell and leave it in here for now. So whenever I'm ready, I'm going to squeeze it out. Okay, set that to the side. I have my acid here. I have a lime. If you do not have a lime, a lemon works. If you're in a pinch, vinegar works. Squeezing it a little bit to make it easier to get more juice out, cutting it in half. A trick for you, if you do not have a lemon or a lime like squeezer to squeeze the juice out, you can take a fork, shove it the whole way to the top, and as you squeeze, twist. So squeeze and twist. It'll help get more of the juice out. I will tell you, if you're working with a lemon and your lemon has seeds, it will not slow down the seeds. So sometimes I juice to the side so I can get the seeds out. I am going to do both limes. I like a lot of lime. And I'll just rinse my hands quick. Awesome. Right. We are going to give a little salt to this. And I have my salt grinder here. A little fresh cracked pepper. Beautiful. We'll give it a nice mix. This is looking beautiful. This is a really nice way to add some vitamins, minerals, and fiber to your tacos. When I see color, I think good nutrition and I think fiber. So we have some nice colors here. We have some greens, some reds, some whites. We're getting some vitamin C from that lime juice. We're getting flavor. But fear not, we have some other veggies to pair with these tacos. We're going to lean on a pre-packaged bag of slaw. I actually picked, and I don't know if I meant to pick this, but one with broccoli, carrots, kohlrabi, cauliflower, and red cabbage. Now, if you're going to look at these are pretty large, and I don't know if this would want to be on a taco. So you might have to pick and choose, but I might honestly pull some of this out and dice it up a little bit more and throw it on my taco because I do not mind having carrots and all of that deliciousness on my fish tacos. But now we're going to pivot. We're going to prepare our fish. We're going to get our fish out. I have 2 pieces of, I believe this is haddock. I would use for fish tacos in particular, you could do salmon. I personally usually use haddock or cod, mahi-mahi. Any of those would do. I do prefer those whiter, more flaky fish versus something like salmon or tuna. But again, those are both very delicious. This is just usually what I gravitate towards, a little lighter, nice lighter, a non-fatty fish. They're a little bit more inexpensive as well. They are going to give us some of those great omega-3 fatty acids, but they are not as fatty as a fatty fish like tuna or salmon. I just diced these up into bite-sized pieces. I have enough for about 2 people here. I'm going to put this in the sink and give my hands a good wash, and then we're going to season up. This is a reminder for those out there who are working with raw meats or raw whatever to wash your hands in between cooking with the raw, or in between preparing and cooking that raw. Also, always try to make sure you're cleaning your workstation. So I was handling raw fish, so I'm going to give my workstation a good clean before I bring in my pan. Right, I have my burner. So we can move our taco shells. I have my pan here. We'll get this heated up. See if I can pull my camera up a little more to give you a better view. There we go. Perfect. All right. We still need to season our fish. We'll go ahead and do what the recipe calls for. We'll do some cumin. I find that this doesn't come out quick enough for me. When it comes to seasoning, if you are new to cooking, it's wonderful to use the recipe amounts as a really good foundation for what needs to go in your recipe. For example, your seasonings, your veggies, whatever. Once you are a bit more of a experienced cook, you can kind of lean on your own expertise. I usually don't really, I am adding salt. I usually don't always measure my seasonings, and I usually play around with them. For example, I didn't think I had cumin, so I really was just going to use a taco seasoning. I also thawed some ground beef that I had in the freezer because I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to get to the store today. So now I have lots of shell options. I probably will have tacos for the rest of the week, but I'm not eating the same old taco, right? I have lots of variations. I have these ricks covered pretty well and mixed. Some nice color here. If you're someone who really enjoys, I'm gonna replace spotlight. Here we go. If you're someone who really enjoys that nice flaky but crispy texture of a fish like this, I recommend trying to get your pan up to a medium high heat with something that fries well, with a fry oil that fries well. Like I'm using avocado oil. If you want to lean on a vegetable oil, some safflower oil, something that can handle that higher heat. Olive oil doesn't always work best when you're trying to cook something at a higher temperature because it'll smoke. But my tip to you for fish is to add a little bit of either cornmeal or flour so that the sides on your actual fish are dry. Making sure they're dry before you add them to the pan, similar to if you're cooking tofu, is going to allow for that really nice sear. Another tip is to not overcrowd your pan. This is a wet food, right? It's not like, a dry carrot from the earth, which is probably a little moist, but there's lots of moisture here. So in order to get that really nice browning and that nice crispy texture, we want to allow that pan to have space when the protein hits the pan. So it's going to react with the heat. It's going to create that beautiful crust, but we need that moisture to escape from the fish. If things are too crowded, they'll essentially steam each other. So we are, I'm just checking the chat here. We are just trying to, in my scenario, get a nice brown, crispy crust. I'm not trying to go for, a deep fried crust. I'm going to remove, there we go. So the question in the chat is flour the fish before the seasoning or after? Great question. Usually you can do it at the same time. If I were doing this without being on camera, I probably would have added these to the flour and sprinkled it, or gluten-free, you don't want to do flour. You can always take your fish and put them, you can paper towel dry them. Just limiting some of that moisture will really help. I did add a good amount of oil to my pan. And I'm only going to add a little bit of fish at a time. So that way these can cook real nice and get that nice crust. You can see that these are covered in seasoning. So that is going to help create more of that dry outer coating. And a nice amount of oil here. We have another question in the chat here. Does gluten-free flour work or should I try something else? Gluten-free flour will work. The flour is essentially, and you don't need to create, because at that point we almost are, like batter dipping it. We're just trying to lightly add some flour so that way it can absorb some of this moisture that you're noticing. So maybe pat dry your fish, cut it up, add it to the bowl. Sprinkle a little bit of flour with your seasonings to just kind of help pull in some of that moisture. So that way, when it hits the pan, it can make that nice golden crust. It's probably hard to see the crust just a little bit. There we are. Giving these a nice flip. There we go. Oh, this one's a good example. Here we go. You can see this is really getting in this nice color here. Now, unfortunately, the pan that I'm currently cooking on is not the pan I do most of my cooking. Or I'm sorry, excuse me, not the pan, but the plug-in skillet, the heat source. I usually work over there back on my gas stove, and the heat is a little bit more aggressive over there. I noticed that my burner is a little bit at a decline based off of the way that the coils are, so it's kind of at a little bit of an angle. But it's nice to have them in a little bit of oil so that way they are getting that good heat contact. All right, I have a bowl here that is clean, but I am going to put a little bit of a paper towel. Since I am sauteing in a little bit more oil, I'm going to just put a little paper towel in here so that way it'll absorb that excess oil, so that way it can try to keep that crust really nice. If you have plain Greek yogurt at home, that'd be a great way to add a sour cream substitute to this recipe. Add some protein, add some calcium, some vitamin D. Good to cook these in batches. Whitefish is very tender and delicate, so it will start to flake. Again, the beauty of this recipe is that it's going in a taco. So if it starts to break up, totally fine. We've let most of the heat or the steam escape. It's getting a nice crust. So I make sure that this is actually cooking through. I'm just going to pop a lid on it. It can capture that steam. It's going to increase the temperature so that way we can make sure the inside of that fish is getting up to that 145 degrees. So we are practicing good safety, good food safety. Again, like I said, if you have other taco shells, like I have these standard stuff, I have all of these things. You could even toast these and throw this into a salad and do a taco salad. So you have lots of options here. I'm going to ask a quick question, and if those of you listening want to throw it in the chat, your response, or you're welcome to unmute, but does anyone make fish tacos on the regular, or is this a new protein to add to tacos? There we go. Is this a frequent meal for some folks, or is this a whole new taco type? And I'm curious, I had never had fish tacos as a child. I have them a lot as an adult. All right, someone says frequent. This would be new, definitely new. I do shrimp, but I will try fish. Awesome. Awesome. It is pretty cool how, I don't even live in Massachusetts. I live in Ohio, but I grew up in central Pennsylvania. And it's really interesting how different food cultures are, even from city to city to state to state. And how that can impact our exposure to certain recipes. For example, this is a regular for me now, but if you would have asked me 3 years ago, have I ever had fish tacos? I probably would have looked at you and I would have thought, do fish even come in taco form? I'm gonna add a little bit more oil here. You can kind of see towards the end of these fish, they started to, there's some nice crunchy brown pieces, but I didn't have a spatula handy, so I just used the scraper to kind of scrape it off the pan. These are all going to add some beautiful texture and flavor to our tacos. And obviously, I put them in, they were this big and they started to crumble apart. I don't mind that. I kind of prefer that they crumble in my taco personally. It just gives me more room to make my taco. My pan is up at a good temperature, so I can tell that they are going to cook quickly. I have to show you all this pretty cool taco gadget I found. It is a little taco stand. So, taco fans, you just set it in. That way you can build your taco and it doesn't fall or fall apart. Pretty nifty. I would recommend if you're an avid taco eater. Well, we have a couple more responses to that question. This is new. Fish is new to me in tacos. A few times a year. Love the taco stand. Oh, thank you. All right. So it seems like we have some mixed responses here. New to some make it, but it seems overall, a lot of people seem surprised, but I'm getting the feeling that this is definitely something some folks are excited to try. Definitely might be something to add into the new weekly rotation. All right. I have my cutting board to the side here. I'm going to grab some of this slaw and dice up some of this little pieces of broccoli that are pretty well diced, but I'm gonna throw them in my taco and see how well it fares. I always love taking slaw. And again, I didn't mean to do I meant to do more of like a cabbage-based slaw, but I love even taking cabbage and dicing it up really fine. Basically making this into a salsa and eating it with tortilla chips. I'm telling you, if you haven't tried that, try it. It'll change your world. Really nice way to sneak in some veggies. That is my favorite thing to do, is find a way to sneak in veggies so I don't feel like I'm eating a boring salad. Not saying salads aren't delicious. I love salads, but you're not going to find me sitting there eating a boring salad. I want some flavors and some textures. All right, this is looking really awesome. If you have not made whitefish before, a really good way to know that your fish is cooked is when it starts to flake. When you can kind of touch it and it starts to flake apart. Like this guy is flaking right apart. It is really tender, so it will flake really easily. All right, so we have a question. How much fish per person in pounds? Great question. So usually when we're looking at a serving of protein, we say between 3 to 6 ounces per person, depending on the size. I like to use this handy dandy form of measurement. We like to use, us dietitians, our hand. A really good visual to know how big a serving of protein is about the size of your palm. Granted, if you're a very large person, you're 6'4", you're a big person, your hands are going to be a lot bigger, and you're naturally going to need more protein than me. So I like to kind of just use my hand as a guide, not super thick, but roughly 3 to 4 ounces. So I believe there's 16 ounces in a pound. So about 3 to 4 ounces. It depends on how many people you're feeding. You might have to do some math depending on how many you're buying for. I'm going to move this out of our way. Gonna just make sure I unplug that so it doesn't slide. All right, perfect. My personal experience when cooking with fish, and maybe someone out there who has made fish tacos more than me has another take on this. I don't always find that a fish like this reheats well. So I don't usually tend to make something like this as a meal that I like to prep and eat more than one day. And what I mean by that is the packet of frozen fish that I bought came with 4 pieces. I thawed 2 and cooked 2. If I wanted to have this for dinner tomorrow night, in my opinion, not that it's not, unsafe by any means. I don't really like the way that the texture is because it's such a delicate fish. Fish is really flaky. I prefer to just eat it as I cook it, but I have the rest of my fish is frozen. I have some ground beef in there. So I'm actually just going to make tacos tomorrow, and I'm going to pivot. I'm going to use my hard shell, and I'm going to do some ground beef with my taco seasoning packet. So that I think reheats very well, but that's just my take on, there we go, cooking with things that don't always reheat well. Maybe some people who make fish tacos feel differently, but that's just my personal experience with fish. I don't always think it reheats well. I have some shredded cheese here. I'm going to add to my taco. I love to add a little bit of shredded cheese. I didn't get a chance to ask, and I will now. Is anyone out there cooking with me tonight? If you are, you can unmute yourself. You can throw it in the chat. I don't see any responses, so I'm going to take it as we're all just hanging out and watching.
Yeah, tomorrow is taco night for me. Tonight, my kids have me made white rice with curry chicken with potatoes and carrots and all these other stuff. So tomorrow is taco night for us.
That's amazing. Tomorrow is Taco Tuesday, but that sounds like a great dinner. Sometimes I think it's fun to just relax and watch. I like to watch other people cook. Unfortunately, I don't get to share this with you all, but it is nice to just sit back and relax.
It's nice and simple.
Yes, and that's the best part. Sometimes I think I forget how simple or how delicious and nutritious we can make something like a taco, right? Especially changing up the protein source. If you are vegan or vegetarian, play around with beans, play around with ground tofu, tempeh, even like some seasonal variations. Like in summer, I like to do a fruit salsa. My nephew, who is 12, he is obsessed with walking tacos. So every birthday party my sister has for him, we have to have walking tacos, which is pretty fun. A fun way to have tacos. I think this was a perfect recipe for our Monday class together because tomorrow is Taco Tuesday. So hopefully I have some other people out there making some tacos sometime this week. And I reminded you how simple and easy they are to make. Oh my goodness, this salsa smells so good. I am about all the fixins. That's my favorite part about a meal is all the parts and pieces. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of slaw. Now, if you're like me and you're looking at this slaw thinking, you look a little dry, do a little drizzle of oil. And this is going to be quite a mouthful. I'm going to add a little bit of avocado. If you want to mash this up into a guacamole and serve on the side, that's okay. I'm going to do a little hit of salt and pepper because I think that I've conditioned myself to think that that's the way you end a meal preparation. But let's just take a moment to look at how beautiful these tacos are. Look at all that color. I see green, red. I see some purple. I see some more muted green. I see some orange. There's so many textures going on here. We have our salsa. We have our flaky fish. We have our charred tacos. I'm going to check the chat here. Nope, but I will make it later this week. Awesome. Someone's going to be making tacos this week. Also, agree reheating fish isn't great. I'd rather cook it fresh. Yeah, and that's just my experience. And again, maybe I don't know how to save it in the fridge so that it tastes great the next time. But, oh, my friend Sophia here says she usually does purple cabbage. Yummy. Purple cabbage is a delicious way to add your tacos. All right, I have 2 tacos. I have the rest of fish here for my husband because I need to make sure I have some for him. All right, best part. We need to do our taste test. I will add a spotlight. Okay. I'm going to try to take a bite. I can't promise this won't all come out of my taco as I try to take a bite. But we're going to go for it. All right. That fish. I think haddock is my new favorite to make fish tacos with. Wow. The avocado on top got a really nice creamy finish. And I remember we had a question earlier in the chat about whether or not when I heated my tortillas, if I liked or if I thought the texture would be okay since I didn't heat with a fat. I think they taste perfect, but they'd probably be a little bit better. They'd be a little bit crispier and a little more softer if I had did it on a skillet with a little bit of fat. These are delicious. Oh, thank you, Dwight. I don't know. These are probably the prettiest tacos I've ever made. All right. I am going to remove my spotlight here. Okay. So we have officially made our fish tacos. And I want to thank you all so much for coming. I know today's class was rather quick. I am going to end our recording to give an opportunity for folks to ask questions and if we want to have any chats before the class officially ends. But I do just want to thank WellSense for sponsoring today's class. And I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now. So you don't have to leave the class yet, but thank you all for watching.